Tashi mentioned media neutrality, balance issues. Frank Sherry, media journalists are often quite worried about crossing the boundary between objective reporting and advocacy. Do you see that as a problem, and where would you place America's voice? How do you see your role?
Well, the media environment in the United States has changed dramatically. It used to have 3 major networks that had the evening news, and they were watched by most of the country. Now you have more ideologically aligned news networks, Fox News most famously or infamously, a conservative network, MSNBC, now becoming more of a progressive network, but a pale imitation of Fox. You have a very dynamic new media online, both right and left wing, that has become the media watchdogs and also a place not only for different views, but for online organizing. And then on our issue, we have a very vibrant ethnic media. So we decided, we used to sit around in the NGO community and complain about how the center of the debate by the objective reporters was skewed in a very xenophobic fashion and very much represented the points of view of the anti-immigrant groups and the politicians who espoused that line, and the voices of the other side of the argument were very faint. So we made it our business to develop capacity with foundation support. There's now local and national groups. My organization spends full time trying to influence the media narrative. We're not going to leave it to the good graces of journalists to find the objective center. We're going to battle for it. And so battling the political press in Washington is very difficult because they know everything. They've figured it all out. We have a lot more success, quite frankly, in what we call the progressive blogosphere, where new media allows for progressive voices to become very influential. In fact, they often drive the mainstream media narrative. And then the place where we have the most success of all is in Spanish language media, which, because this issue is topic one for the community that they serve, it's an area where you get the best reporting, the most regular and intense reporting, and you can mobilize a community that is directly affected and hear back from the community. So the media environment's changed. We used to complain about it, now we make it a priority, we have capacity to do it, and we spend every day trying to make sure that we get our point out. Let me give you one example to try to make it clear. The political press for the longest time was writing the story that Latino immigrants in the United States were mostly not citizens, mostly didn't vote, mostly didn't care very much about immigration as an issue, and therefore weren't a factor in elections. Well, we've been documenting in recent elections, and in 2008, we were able to really make the case that, in fact, and we put a lot of money and effort into polling and reports and working with journalists to make the case, and what came out of the 2008 election was just the opposite. The conventional wisdom was wrong. And we didn't win everybody over, but we won a lot of people over that, in fact, Latino immigrants did vote in record numbers, that they cared about immigration as a defining issue, not the top issue, but the defining issue, and they swung a number of close races. In fact, helped Barack Obama win the presidency by winning the states of Florida and key southwestern states. And that was a huge breakthrough that, quite frankly, was generated by advocates, not by the mainstream press. They would still be reporting the same old canards that the sleeping giant is not really that important, because that's what the right of center of gravity in the press still says.
Given the mainstream press's attachment to the status quo, Susan Margetti, and to conventional wisdom, I'm wondering how you went about convincing CBC that they needed to take a different approach on Metro Morning. The program was, after all, pretty successful when you took it over, so there wasn't really that much impetus for them to take a risk, was there?
I would say selling the why was the hardest thing I had to do. Because, as Melinda says, Metro Morning was in 2001, 2002 when I joined the CBC in Toronto. Number 5, number 7, number 8. That's not bad. Toronto has 35 licensed radio stations. 60 signals are beamed into the city from Barrie to Buffalo. And people have real choice. So there wasn't this urgency around we have to change. And one of the things that we did, I'm not sure yet that I actually sold the people. What we did was we went out and we brought in a number of people from a number of communities within the city. And talk about listening and hearing what people have to say. And one woman walked in and she just said point blank, I do not listen. She was new to Toronto, new to Canada. She said, I do not listen to CBC. You're old, you're white, you're male, and you're worried. I really objected to the worried part. People were not worried. They did not see the urgency of the situation. And the urgency was, it was this simple. In 1961, Toronto was 3% diverse. And as we began our process of change in 2001, 2002, Toronto was then 43% diverse. And as you've heard, it's now at the halfway mark. So when people come in and speak to your journalists, your programmers, your hosts, your technicians, and they talk about the stories they're not hearing, and they talk about the issues in their communities that you're not reflecting, and they're looking you in the eye and they're saying, I would listen to you if you were more relevant to me. And that would begin a whole process around relevancy and what that means, because it means different things, of course, to different people. And that's why I say for me, at the end of the day, I may say this 3 more times, forgive me, but hiring for me is absolutely key and core. If you want to create programming, if that's your business, could be another business you're in, could be a product you're selling, whatever it is that you are in the business of or the service of, you absolutely have to have the team to deliver it. And the most successful thing we did was build that team. And that's what took some time. I happened to have, now this was a little miracle, I think it was a gift. I happened to have 4 vacancies when I first started. That never happens at the CBC. I used those vacancies to begin to hire strategically, to actually go out and find the very best people I could with an eye and an ear on beginning to reflect the diversity of the city. Because if you took a picture of the staff, in 2001, we were 2% diverse. Not very diverse. In Canada's most multicultural city at the halfway mark. And if you took a picture today, it's around 35-40%. Officially, it's at 25%. What that means is in Canada, you don't have to self-declare. So of those who self-declare on my staff, 25% are diverse. Even if you take that as the lowest number, 2% to 25% is a humongous jump. And it is those people on that incredible team, I love my team, who actually bring those perspectives and insights and stories to the table, and that's what affects the sound, but that's what affects the relevancy with the audience. And it was without a doubt, one of the key drivers in our success. In 1995, 96, 97, 98, 99, 2000, Metro Morning was not number 1. It had a fabulous host, it had a fabulous concept, and yet it wasn't reaching the majority of people in the city. It was only after we made our changes in 2001, 2002 to be more reflective, more connective, and more relevant to more people that we would actually go to number 1 for what would be last month 24 times.
Rukaya Diallo, so we're hearing from Susan, a lot depends on who's telling the story, who are the journalists who are involved. Does it also depend on who their editors are? Do you think some of the negative framing that we see comes because of pressure from the editorial side on individual reporters and journalists?
I think that it comes from a kind of pressure and a kind of prejudice about what the audience is expecting from the television. Most of people, for example, in France, we have a real lack of people of color in the media, and people, the editors, tell that the audience is not ready to see the people, and every experience that bring some people of color in front of the media shows that it's not true. It's not true because people don't change the channel when they see someone different. So with Les Indivisibles, we have took part of a public manifesto that was appealing to a change in the perception of the media and in the representation, because in France most of the journalists are from the same backgrounds, and and it's a real issue because they bring the same perception of the minorities, and they for example, when there has been the riots in 2005, the perception was an ethnic perception. And the rights were not ethnic but social, so they can't perceive the population as a native population. So we think that the recruiting of the journalists should have some change, and perhaps the journalists should sign a charter of deontology, because one of the issues is that, for example, when there are some drug-related issues on some this kind of news, the origins of the protagonist of this kind of news items are always mentioned, even if it doesn't mean anything to the news. So perhaps the question is at the same time the pressure and who makes the news.
Bashi Karachi, the European Network Against Racism, of which you were formerly president and with which you are still working in an advisor capacity, has said exactly this, that we need more hiring of minority journalists. But how? How can we promote that? Do we need quotas? Do we need specific targets? What would really achieve that goal?
First of all, Melinda, hiring of ethnic journalists is not enough, because when somebody is hired by a newspaper or by TV station, very quickly they have to adjust. And if they don't adjust, then they're fired very quickly. So, of course, in our wishes that the whole policy should be diversified in the media, where not only the journalists, but also staff, managers, editors, all over the levels, there are people representing the society they live in. So it's not that you should hire just because a person is black or a person is Chinese, but because he's a professional person and he can do the job. Now, having said that, I think we should also keep in mind a new development, that media is not only now newspapers and TV, but also websites. And web, actually, I look at the websites today. If you look at the website, there are 65,000 websites against Islam alone in Europe. So with so much power the media has and the web has, then hiring has become the second issue. What we are looking for in European Union, in our organization, and also in European Union, because Europe has very different experience than America has, because America has a long tradition of diversity, where we in Europe still think that Europe is the navel of the world and everybody revolves around us, you know. So I think it is very important to remember that in their diversity policy, in the media, we should also look at the loopholes where the problems are and try to fix it. And it is not enough to say that we want to have this, we have to also be ourselves be very professional. We, in our focus a lot in professionalism among us, among ethnic minorities, how to deal with the media, how to do mapping, how to do documentation, and come back with those results to the journalists and establish a kind of a report, because we have realized now that in this setup we have, you cannot compete against the media. You just simply, they are too powerful. So you need to draw them and open yourself to them so that they are neutral, they make this coverage which is necessary, as they do with the business or with feminist lobby or whoever they cover, exactly as it is. I don't want that minority should be given extra advantage or positive coverage. No, we want them to cover us as we are part of the society we live in.